What is up, people of, well, let me do this actually. Did not mean to zoom. You gotta get a little, anyway. Yeah, so I wanted to hop on today, and basically, that's interesting. I got 10 views on my calling out Candace Owens post, and then I got 13 views on why I posted audio recordings of the gospel, which I realized I have to upload. I need to upload the book of Matthew. I think it had issues where it wasn't like doing that. It wasn't uploading, or it wasn't rendering properly. So yeah, and I think it's this one. Yeah. Yes. So finish video. Yeah, finish video. 1080p. Export. Okay. But yeah, so today my wife asked me to go pick up a scale. She asked me to pick up a little food scale from over, like, the next neighborhood over, pretty much, here in Sacramento. And effectively, I was biking there. I biked there, got there fine. I'd been to this place before because it's part of a Facebook group where people like put up stuff for other people to come and get. And I had gotten an item from this guy before. I actually got a graphics card of all things. So pardon, I have some dust in my eye. It rained today, so I think my allergies are acting up a bit, or there's some pollen. But yeah, so to continue on with that, I got there, got the scale fine, and the right grip, I don't know if it's because of the rain, but the right grip started to come off. And I was like, it should be fine, as long as I hold on to it. And it was loose, like I could pull it off. Just to give some context, the left grip was not as loose. So yeah, but with that being said, I ended up biking over to this place, and then I picked up the scale, was biking back, and there's like a really it's like a really steep curb. Like, it's, if you think of a normal curb where it's probably, I don't know, 4 to 5 inches tall, this was like 6 inches, or like twice that. So it was like 8 plus. It was a lot. And I was biking back and I caught the curb a little bit. I got a little bit of air, a little bit of hang time, and I didn't wipe out immediately. So I ended up going onto the curb, and it was a little off. I was like, oh yeah, I just caught some air. Cool. I as long as I stick the landing, I'll be fine. I can navigate out of this, and be okay. But what ended up happening was I caught it, and then I was like, cool, I'm steady, and I think what ended up following after that was I wobbled off to the right, and there was a corner. It was like a little alcove, so that people didn't take the turn too quickly. I'm guessing there were issues with people like coming onto the sidewalk where pedestrians were or whatever, because it's a long road that's right there. So I presume maybe people were um, like ripping and roaring around that corner or whatever. Um, but yeah, so I try and correct. I don't make it back onto the sidewalk, right? And then I fall off. And when I fall off, I'm pretty sure, and any time there's, I think, any sort of this could be a painful injury type thing, type situation, we can black out, right? Um, and I ended up being fine. I got a little bit of road rash and like a cut on my knee, but it ended up being where I was fine. But the interesting thing, I think, is that and I guess this can really apply to anything. If you ask any of my family, they'll probably tell you about a time that I crashed the bike into the back of a recently new, I think, red Miata, as far as I could gauge at the age of like 6. Excuse me. But yeah, so just carrying forward from that, I ended up crashing, and then I went over. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I had to have flipped because the bike ended up being behind me. Either that or I had to have like flipped. I probably did like a little over the handlebar moment. Yeah, first time I would have done a front flip. Hey, I don't think that counts, but I digress. So following that though, there's basically a moment where I was just like, I looked, I think I looked at my wound, and I looked at the wound on my knee, right? Or looked at both my wounds. And then I was like, okay, I am injured. I am hurt, but I am alive, right? And, seeing that, it was one of those things where I don't know that I've necessarily taken a moment to be still over the last week. I think or maybe even like the last 2 weeks, I think I've been a little like, wow, I gotta get like this, that, and this done, right? And, there's a Bible verse that says, "Be still and know that I am the Lord your God," which basically just means, hey, God has it in control. There's literally nothing outside of his control. If, this is presuming you're operating within the belief of Christianity, or of the, Judeo-Christian belief system, etc. But from my understanding and my experience and what I have found to be true, that is the overarching truth to the world, and why things go about in the world and how things can be improved and bettered and brought back to a good place. Yeah. So, and really like ultimately get better, for sure. But with saying that, I ended up laying there, and I was thinking like, okay, be still. And then I was thinking like, so often we can get caught up with responsibilities, and this is probably nothing new for anyone that's been around church at all, but there's always responsibilities, there's always uncomfortable conversations that one needs to have with friends, there's always school, there's always like the things of the world don't ever not exist within the world, right? Like I think if we look at education really, to an extent, if not for sure, has a very, and I mean, this is a broad brushstroke in my opinion. But there is a Pharisee nature to education where it's like, this is, we're teaching this and this is the right thing, right? Which and in any given culture, no matter what that is, whether it's an educational culture or a church culture or whatever, like there's always going to be some, imperfection to it. Otherwise, why would anything perfect ever like be in something imperfect? Like that doesn't really make sense. I think one can be imperfect and go the other way, because even like within the realm of perfection, imperfect or imperfections is a derivative of that, but not the other way around. And I mean, you can find that with pretty much anything. And I mean, granted, it depends on mindset, but I'm sure if you look up the history of perfect, you'd probably find perfect first and then imperfect. Or really, you'd probably find good first before you'd find bad, like if you really track back the history of the words. Shout out to my dad for being an English nerd. Yeah. So anyhow, and like I get it. It's not always the easiest thing. And that's not saying don't do anything. Like I think it's be still and take a moment to really collect and think about the situation you're in and how you can get out of it. I recently was a part of a group call that was talking about, we have a brain, right? And we have thoughts, and we're able to, like, we're not just given a brain to let it sit there. Then, why else would things like educational systems or stuff like that grow and have a chance to prosper, right? If we didn't have a chance to like think and engage with our intellect, or with intellect. So yeah, and just continuing on from that, it's really just something where we are able to, like, I think if we already know the way through, it's really just thinking about what steps to take, right? And that's not always easy. Sometimes you need help. I mean, I over like the last year or so have needed some help, and thankfully I've had a good support system, through community of other believers and just like God and then other believers and all of that. But yeah, so it's it's going to be okay. I think maybe people need to hear that, and it's going to work out exactly how it needs to work out. And there's because if it needs to happen, it will happen. There's really no other way around that. And this might sound inflammatory or like, I don't know, like stirring up and disunified, but I think, or ununified, I guess. But I think if we didn't have events like Hurricane Katrina, or if we didn't have events like 9/11, or if we didn't have like these major traumatic or major, what would probably be traumatic at the time, but major challenging events, then we would never be able to see, I think, some of the things that become apparent after the things happen, right? And we wouldn't be able to grow and understand how we need to be within that specific happening. So yeah, it's, you know, it's kind of like with Instagram. Like when I posted on Instagram last year or the year before, I didn't really know, I was like creatively kind of funky, and I was just like, I don't know what to like I need to be creative, but like I I I have a tough time, I think, doing things without a purpose. So I think, I like to actually go at as many lanes as possible in relation to things, and then from that, you know, make as much progress in multiple lanes versus just one. Um, and I mean, that I think, and that's not a bad thing. I think I used to think it was more of a bad thing because I'm like, I'm multitasking and I'm not like giving this like one thing like particular attention. But then it's like, but then you also realize, I think, that you grow and you're able to compound things into one thing that only you would be able to like synthesize that and have it come out in that way. Um, but yeah, it's and I think there is still a good, I think there is still a good point at focusing on one thing. Like I can understand doing, like promoting, for instance, on Instagram, I promoted my business along with, I also just wanted to dance and put something creative out, especially because, it was very, it was still, I think, pretty pandemic heavy for a lot of people. So with that, it ended up being where, where I just ended up wanting to really push both. I want to push, hey, this is me and I'm building a business and it is becoming something with or without help, right? Um, and then along with that, I was also looking to build up like my dance skill. I don't know like, I remember back when I was younger, I used to dance so often. I used to dance literally every day, and I was pretty dang good. I was a, a pretty solid, I mean, granted, there were like weird teenage transition type things that I just could not avoid. Um, but I was pretty good. And, even in college, I think I was pretty solid. I was pretty fit at one point, and then I fell off. Um, Cause life, and I wasn't going about things the best way. Um, but I digress. So with saying that, I ended up just really putting in work where, also I'll have to start recording on the back because this makes me uncomfortable looking at myself. Um, I'll have to really, or I ended up doing that, and then, I think there is still a purpose and a plus and a perk to dancing, like dancing just to dance. So um, that is something to consider. And I think if one's heart is right about it, then everything else will be, fall into place. I mean, I mean, it's not really so much about words as much as it is about one's heart. I hope people understand that. I think there's, well, I'm sure there's a Bible verse that says, the Lord doesn't look at the outward man, but the Lord looks at the inward man and his heart, and you know, judges him based off of that, not toward one's outward actions, because it's that's not always the clearest indicator, or it's not the clearest indicator. So yeah, but anyhow, I feel like I preached a little bit to myself, and this is probably as long as of a video as I'm going to make, but all in all, I think it was something. The bike crash was helpful. I also felt like I was like, hey, I'm alive. I wrecked a little bit. Yeah. Especially if it's like by accident, I think those reminders that you are just human is just really nice. Yeah. So, man, I was about to go into a whole tangent. Anyhow, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. And, I need to get an exam done. So I'm probably going to work on that. And yeah. So anyhow, peace and take care. All right. God bless.